Welcome back to Big Sky Buckets. I'm Big Sky, and today we're talking Pascal Siakam finally got traded. Talking about whether I was right, talking about the packages, who won, who lost, and then the repercussions this will have on teams that are buyers and sellers getting closer to the deadline, what this means for the market in general, and we'll break it all down today. Before we get started, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. I'd really appreciate all the support and subscriptions to get this up and going. I'd love to do this more and need that support in order to do so. Like the video, comment down below. There might be some varying opinions. I'm really interested to see what everyone has to say about, who won, who lost, if it was a draw, all that good stuff. If you're an audio-only listener, give it a rate, give it a listen. Let's jump into it. Pascal Siakam is finally traded to the Indiana Pacers. I got it right. In early December, I made that short, as I talked about in the last video, about how they should look into this. And I didn't articulate enough of just how important Siakam would be to this team. And the fact that they did this deal is huge. What Woj is already saying now is that there's basically an under-the-table handshake, that they're going to work on a new deal. So that's exactly what you want to hear. I don't know how they figured. I don't know how they got to that point with how much Pascal's camp was like unrestricted free agency. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. Well, congrats to the Pacers. This is a huge win for them. The package, let's just talk about that really quick. The package is Jordan Nwora, Bruce Brown, a salary filler, and 3 first-round picks now. It's Indiana's 24 and 26 unprotected. And then it's also this really convoluted 24 pick they got in a trade early, like a couple of years back. Worst of Indiana, Houston, I think it's OKC and Jazz, something like that. So whoever is closer to 30, it's a whatever pick, to be honest. But if you're the Raptors, along with, there was a third team, the New Orleans Pelicans were salary dumping Kira Lewis Jr., who wasn't getting much run time on a team that's pretty solid in the West. So they ducked the luxury tax, which, okay, sounds good. And then Indiana Pacers get a second-round pick from that. Look, we're not going to really talk about the Pelicans. They were a whatever team in this 3-team deal. But look, I'm going to take my victory lap. I was right about Indiana going for Siakam. This really helps their front court defense. The fit between him and Miles Turner is going to be immaculate. Defensively, playmaking-wise, and just the shot variance going into the paint and being a good paint scorer in Siakam next to stretch 5 Miles Turner, who's been playing incredible offense as a stretch 5 for the Pacers this year. That's huge. And what they gave up here is not really too much, in my opinion. Now, you may say 3 picks is a lot. Fair. But 2 in this year's draft, which has been deemed weak, or, in my opinion, there's just no generational talent, so there's less reason to tank by the deadline for a lot of teams, especially with the amount of parity. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then at 26, you figure with Siakam deal and Tyrese Halliburton's extension kicking in by that point, they're going to be a good team. So these are low-value first-round picks, but they are first-round picks. So if you're the Raptors, you walked out, because I think they're now out of the trade deadline entirely because they got rid of the 2 guys they needed to. The 2 expirings in OG, you got promising young players in RJ and Emmanuel Quigley. That's what you wanted. Now you get picks. So these will help down the road in case you want to make a big trade. And shout out to Masai Ujiri. I can't believe he got this. I can't believe he got this for Siakam, who we had been talking for so long about what is the value. Well, the value has been set, and thus the market has been set. I think this is a solid, both teams win kind of deal. I know that picks are valuable. I'm a very big pick guy myself, knowing that the new CBA basically makes it so that picks and young players on those young contracts are extremely important, because the hard cap and the second apron introduced in the new CBA are very damning when you get hit by it. But if the Pacers really wanted to make a run in the playoffs, this is how you do it. You get better defensively. This doesn't hurt offensively, and you don't give up young guys that have potential. You didn't have to give up Nembhard. You didn't have to give up Mathurin. You didn't have to give up Jarris Walker. I really thought one of those 3 had to be in this deal, and they managed to get around that fact, which is huge for them, because down the line, whenever you decide that Jarris Walker is either a starting caliber guy or he's not, and he's a great bench piece, having Siakam doesn't get in your way until, hey, maybe we can flip Siakam down the line if Jarris Walker really is that level of player. You know, Buddy Hield's about to move off. He's about to walk, which is fine because you have Nimhard and Mathurin ready to start whenever that time comes in the offseason. Pacers, Raptors both get a W. This is exactly what they wanted. And so now we get to move on to, look, I know it's not as, the more you think about it, the more you realize this is a win for both teams. You get the picks you need if you're the Raptors. And if you do want to make another deal before the deadline of buying, not sure why, but you have those picks. You have some young guys that maybe you don't want to keep too long or whatnot, but in the front office and ownership's idea to retool around Scottie, this is still a good start. This is a good start. So congrats to them. Masai managed to pull something what I would consider out of nothing. And the same can be said for the Pacers. I really thought they were going to have to give something. I thought it was going to be a typical Masai. Pascal's either walking or we're going to fleece. And to me, this is a win on both sides. This is great. This is huge. So congrats to them. But the ramifications of this in the grand scheme of the trade deadline coming up, it's actually what I was going to talk about today until this trade happened, and then I had to scrap that entire video I recorded. Now the sellers will dictate the market because that's basically what it was. You got first rounders and salary filler for Siakam, which is huge. And now, because there's so little sellers, now that the Raptors, they're done selling, that means, in my opinion, you have 8 teams at most left that are actually selling. That means for every team that is interested in a player, there will most likely be some level of bidding war. It means that the price is kind of inflated in an interesting way. The Hawks are a fire-selling team, headlined by DeJounte, who's now the main piece on the block in terms of this deadline because Siakam is gone. Zach LaVine doesn't have a market currently, otherwise he might be up there, but his contract is bad. DeJounte's is good, and he is an improved offensive player. He's still a good player. And there's teams that are lined up and interested. You had the Raptors, but they're gone. You have the Hornets here that have some guys like Terry Rozier should garner some intrigue. I think people are going to look at Gordon Hayward as a buyout candidate because he's getting paid so much. The Spurs have some vets here. For the Trailblazers and Wizards also watching this, they're veterans like Malcolm Brogdon, who's garnered interest, Jeremy Grant, who's garnered interest, Tyus Jones, and Kyle Kuzma, who both have also garnered interest from multiple teams. Their price is probably going to, when the Wizards said 2 picks for Kyle Kuzma, that looks pretty realistic now that he just signed a new contract. Same with Jeremy Grant. The Bulls with LaVine, again, there's not really a market there. I think there will be at some point, but what he'll garner, that's to be determined. Memphis hasn't really chimed in yet on what they're going to do. I think they should be sellers, but their pieces are not massive, but they do have some small wings that maybe they decide to move off of since they're going to be in the lottery this year. And then with the Nets not having picked a side, I think they will both sell and buy, or sell to buy. That kind of puts them more at the buyer's market than sellers, other than Dorian Finney-Smith, another wing. But all of those guys that are on the block, their price kind of just went a little bit up because you got 3 first for an expiring contract. Yeah, this is big because 2 things here. What I talked about in my earlier video today that I had to scrap was I was basically making the argument that if this exact trade happened, which it did, the sellers they set the market, which is because there's so little sellers because of the draft, which is being coined as a weak draft. Well, that remains to be seen. But what seems very certain, there's not a generational talent like in the last 3 drafts for the most part, or a franchise level guy. Therefore, teams are less inclined to blow it up or be hot sellers by the deadline, which is why there's so little of them, along with the fact that there's so much parity in the NBA right now. In both the East and the West, there's a lot of teams that are just within 1 game of each other in the playoff standings. A lot of teams probably think it's their year to win, So they may be willing to give up a little bit more than we may value certain players in order to put themselves in position of finally lifting a Larry O'Brien trophy. Teams like the Celtics trying to get a bench scoring piece, you know, Heat, Nets, in my opinion, trying to get someone like DeJounte Murray, a lead guard, because that's necessary for them, especially the Heat, because I really do think they could make a lot of noise because they've done so in the past, but they've never sealed the deal. And doing that, especially with the emergence of Jaime Jaquez Jr. as a rookie, Tyler Hero playing absolutely great offense, the best playoff riser in the business in Jimmy Butler, and your core Bam Adebayo defensive anchor, they could go in on that. The Nets need a guard as well because they don't have control of their picks, because the Rockets have control of that because of the Harden trade a long time ago. There's just so many teams here that are buyers, and now the sellers basically are like looking at the Pascal Siakam thing of a guy who's expiring that his value shouldn't have been 3 first-round picks in salary filler. It should have been less. We don't. A lot of these guys too on here, they're not expiring. They do not only have 2 years on the deal. DeJounte, Kyle Kuzma, Jeremy Grant, those are 3 players in specifically that signed recently new contracts. They're going to be there for a while, which means that the teams that are selling those players now have a lot of leverage. Huge win for the Pacers. Another win for Masai Ujiri and the Toronto Raptors here in terms of fully getting assets, in terms of retooling around Scotty Barnes without having to extend or pay OG and Pascal Siakam. Wow. What a bomb today. Really. And that's huge. And now, so next, I'll just kind of conclude this here. Next episode is going to be a much bigger one about what teams want or need by the deadline that are either competing or contending in general for the playoffs or play-in playoffs, championship, what they might be willing to give up, what I think teams specifically are going to want in return, because now that we understand what the kind of top tier of the market looked like, I at least got something going for me in terms of getting the Siakam to Pacers thing right. So I walk out of here with a win, like the Pacers and the Raptors. But thank you guys so much for watching. Wild that we're still about 2 or 3 weeks out from the deadline, and we got this already. If you are interested at all about the deadline, just know that things should start ramping up because there's going to be some bidding wars. There's going to be some bidding wars because there's not enough sellers this year. So look forward to that. We got a good one next time. Going to do a lot of research about what these teams specifically need, what they might be willing to give up, what the teams selling those players are going to ask for in return. But thank you guys so much for watching. Sub, like, comment. Wild day or just wild news. Congrats to both teams. And I will see you guys later, probably in a couple of days, and I'll chop that episode. Peace.